On a quiet morning in 48 BCE, Julius Caesar made a decision that would haunt humanity for over 2,000 years. Surrounded by enemy forces in Alexandria's harbor, he ordered his fleet to be set ablaze. The flames spread beyond his ships, consuming parts of the greatest repository of human knowledge ever assembled. But what if those flames had never reached the scrolls? What if the Library of Alexandria had survived intact through the centuries? Today, we live in a world shaped by that loss. Entire civilizations' worth of knowledge vanished in smoke and ash. Mathematical breakthroughs that could have accelerated human progress by centuries were reduced to nothing. Medical discoveries that might have saved millions of lives disappeared forever. The question isn't just what we lost, but what we never became because of it. Before we dive into this alternate timeline, let me paint you a picture of what actually stood in Alexandria. This wasn't just some ancient bookstore. We're talking about a collection that dwarfed anything the world had ever seen. Between 400,000 and 700,000 scrolls filled its halls, containing the accumulated wisdom of Egyptian priests, Greek philosophers, Persian astronomers, and scholars from across the known world. The Ptolemaic rulers didn't mess around when it came to acquiring knowledge. They literally searched every ship that entered Alexandria's harbor, confiscating any books they found and replacing them with copies. Think about that for a second. Every merchant vessel, every diplomatic mission, every traveler who sailed into that port was forced to surrender their written materials. The Ptolemies were building something unprecedented, a universal library that contained not just Greek learning, but the intellectual treasures of every civilization they could reach. The systematic organization was revolutionary too. A scholar named Callimachus created what might be considered the world's first library catalog, organizing hundreds of thousands of works by subject and author. This wasn't some chaotic warehouse of scrolls. It was a precision instrument designed for research and discovery. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The minds that worked within those walls represent some of history's most brilliant thinkers. Eratosthenes calculated the circumference of Earth using nothing but shadows and geometry, achieving accuracy within a few hundred kilometers of the actual measurement. Hero of Alexandria designed the world's first steam engine. Though it remained a curiosity, rather Archimedes revolutionized mathematics and then a practical tool, .d physics, with principles that wouldn't be fully understood again until the Renaissance. But these weren't isolated geniuses working in vacuum. They were part of an intellectual ecosystem where knowledge built upon knowledge, where one scholar's discovery became the foundation for another's breakthrough. The library wasn't just preserving information. It was actively generating new understanding through collaboration and cross-pollination of ideas. So, what happens in our alternate timeline where Caesar's fire never spreads? Where the library not only survives but continues to grow and evolve through the centuries? The ripple effects would be staggering. First, consider the scientific implications. Eratosthenes' mathematical techniques for measuring Earth could have been refined and expanded by successive generations of scholars. Instead of waiting over 1,000 years for the age of exploration, advanced navigation techniques might have emerged in the Roman period. Global trade networks could have developed centuries earlier, connecting civilizations across continents in ways that would reshape the entire ancient world. The medical knowledge housed at Alexandria represented a fusion of Egyptian, Greek, and Mediterranean healing traditions. Ancient surgical techniques, pharmaceutical recipes, and anatomical understanding that took Europe centuries to rediscover could have been continuously developed and improved. Picture systematic medical education emerging in the Roman Empire, complete hospital systems preventing the health disasters that plagued medieval Europe, and early forms of public health policy that might have contained or prevented the devastating plagues that repeatedly swept across the ancient world. But here's where the story gets really fascinating. The library's survival would have prevented what historians call the intellectual dark age that followed Rome's decline. Instead of knowledge fragmenting and disappearing into scattered monasteries, it would have remained centralized and accessible. The scientific method, which took until the Renaissance to fully develop, might have emerged 1,000 years earlier through the continuous refinement of Alexandrian research techniques. Mathematical works that were lost forever could have evolved into increasingly sophisticated systems. Ptolemaic astronomy, instead of being frozen in time, might have developed into heliocentric models centuries before Copernicus ever picked up a telescope. The implications cascade through every field of human endeavor, from engineering to philosophy to the arts. The question isn't just what knowledge would have survived, but how that knowledge would have grown and transformed in the hands of continuous generations of scholars. The political implications alone would have reshaped the entire trajectory of Western civilization. Roman emperors, instead of ruling through military might and political maneuvering, would have had access to sophisticated treatises on governance, economics, and social organization from dozens of different cultures. Imagine Marcus Aurelius not just philosophizing about Stoicism, but drawing upon preserved Persian administrative systems, Egyptian agricultural techniques, and Greek democratic innovations to create hybrid forms of government that balanced efficiency with representation. The library would have become a magnet for the brightest minds across the empire and beyond. Instead of intellectual centers scattered across different regions, Alexandria would have remained the undisputed capital of human learning. Chinese innovations in metallurgy and engineering could have reached Roman territories centuries earlier through scholarly exchange. Indian mathematical concepts, including the revolutionary notion of zero, might have transformed European arithmetic long before the medieval period. But here's what really gets me excited about this alternate timeline. The technological cascade effects would have been absolutely mind-blowing. Hero's steam engine wasn't just a party trick. It was a glimpse into mechanical principles that wouldn't be fully exploited until the Industrial Revolution. With continuous refinement and the mathematical frameworks preserved in the library, we might have seen steam-powered mills grinding grain in the 3rd century, hydraulic systems revolutionizing Roman aqueducts, and mechanical calculators emerging alongside astronomical instruments. The preservation of Archimedes' mechanical treatises would have been particularly game-changing. His innovations in leverage, pulley systems, and hydraulic engineering, combined with the metallurgical knowledge from various civilizations, could have produced construction techniques that would make Roman engineering look primitive by comparison. Picture massive public works as projects powered by steam, precision instruments for navigation and surveying, and manufacturing processes that could have supported population densities unimaginable in the ancient world. Now, let's talk about something most people overlook: the linguistic implications. The library contained works in dozens of languages, from Phoenician commercial records to Sanskrit philosophical texts. Instead of these languages gradually disappearing, they would have been continuously studied and preserved. We might have developed sophisticated translation techniques centuries earlier, creating a truly international, scholarly community that could communicate across cultural boundaries. This linguistic preservation would have had profound cultural effects, too. Epic poems that we know existed but have been lost forever would have continued inspiring new generations of writers. Entire schools of philosophy that disappeared without a trace could have evolved and influenced later thinkers. The intellectual diversity that made Alexandria so remarkable would have been maintained rather than gradually eroding into the more homogeneous Christian scholarship that dominated the medieval period. Religious development would have taken a completely different path as well. Early Christian theologians would have had access to a much broader range of philosophical and theological traditions. Instead of Christianity developing in relative intellectual isolation, it would have been forced to engage continuously with Persian, Egyptian, and Greek religious thought. This could have produced a more syncretic form of Christianity, or, alternatively, prevented Christianity from becoming the dominant religion altogether, as intellectual diversity remained more valued than doctrinal conformity. The economic implications stretch far beyond simple technological advancement. With better navigation techniques emerging centuries earlier, trade routes would have developed faster and more efficiently. The Indian Ocean could have become a Roman lake, connecting Alexandria directly to the spice markets of Asia and the gold mines of East Africa. European contact with the Americas might have happened 1,000 years sooner, as improved shipbuilding techniques and navigation instruments made long-distance voyages more feasible. But perhaps most intriguingly, the very concept of knowledge itself would have evolved differently. Instead of the medieval view of learning as recovering lost ancient wisdom, scholars would have maintained the Alexandrian tradition of actively pushing the boundaries of understanding. The idea that human knowledge could continuously expand rather than simply preserve what came before would never have been interrupted. So here we are, staring at one of history's greatest what-ifs. A single fire in Alexandria changed everything. Not just what we know, but who we became as a species. The loss wasn't just about scrolls and papyrus. It was about the death of an idea that knowledge belongs to everyone, that human understanding should grow without limits. Think about it this way. We're living in the shadow of that ancient catastrophe. Every medical breakthrough that came centuries too late, every technological innovation that required rediscovering lost principles, every philosophical insight that had to be painfully reconstructed from fragments. We've spent the last 2 millennia playing catch-up with ourselves, but maybe that's the real lesson here. The Library of Alexandria wasn't just a building or a collection of books. It was a mindset, a commitment to preserving and expanding human knowledge regardless of political upheaval or cultural change. That vision didn't die in Caesar's flames, it just took different forms. Today's internet, our universities, our global scientific community, they're all echoes of what Alexandria represented. The question isn't just what would have happened if the library survived. It's what we're going to do with that legacy now. Because every time we choose curiosity over ignorance, collaboration over isolation, preservation over destruction, we're rebuilding Alexandria one discovery at a time. The fire may have won the battle, but the war for human knowledge is far from over.